Welcome to Sunday Night Flesh and Blood. I'm Nick, here with Colin and Ryan. We are Team Raising Quell, subsidiary of the Romping Club, and we're coming at you with episode 1, our instant reactions to Pro Tour LA. It just ended, 15 minutes ago? So yeah, we're going to jump right into it. All right. I think first of all we should just say congratulations to Arthur. All three of us watched the end of that game, right?
Yeah,
It
it was exciting.
It was very exciting. Definitely the most exhilarating Dromai game I've ever either played in or watched, because usually they're just miserable and I'm gonna bang my head against the table.
I think most exciting Pro Tour across the board, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. Like there were multiple games that like I watched that stuck out of my head as like, oh my gosh, that was so tense. That was so like just a nail biter.
Yeah, I'm gonna get ahead of myself, but those brute mirrors specifically were like so good, so back and forth. Like the skill level is like so high with all these players. The hold the lines, the flesh
Yeah,
bags, all that
yeah.
stuff.
One thing Arthur did in the finals specifically, just like thinking about how good these players are. Um, and the announcers called this out too, but like he had like a sink blow in his hand that could cover up like a swing with the hatchet, but instead he chose to block 3 and like save the sink below, and like assuming to like play around spill blood or play around dominate or something, and then it lined up exactly like that. And I was just like watching that sequence was just like, yeah, like I would have just like slammed the D-react on the hatchet and got burned for it. And I remember thinking, I was like, wow, okay, like I don't think I could hang with these guys. Holy cow!
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it's a great example of like playing to his outs. He looked at the board state. He looked, how am I going to win this game? How am I going to lose this game? You saw him going through his graveyard, going through his deck many times, and he just knew like this is the sequence I need to play to have the highest percentage chance.
Yeah, and I think Arthur has only been playing for a year, right? I think I read that.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow, that's
we've been
impressive
playing for like 3-4 years now.
Yeah, like since Monarch.
I'm that stink below in a fucking heart.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the ultimate misplay, which is registering Bolton. But yeah, it's just like so impressive. Like, yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Nick. Since this is our first episode, maybe we should say that Nick is a full-time Bolton main. Played Briar a little bit back in the day, but now full in on Bolton. I myself have only ever played Rhinar. Ryan gets around the most out of all of us, but is mostly dash most of the time.
Yeah, Ryan really, he gets around. Recently I have, and we started a little blog a while ago called fabmains.com. I think I post on there maybe like once a month. Colin and Ryan, when's the last time you guys posted on Fab Mains? Like 2017?
It was, I think I posted once during Bright Lights spoiler season and then never again.
Yeah. So, but
I posted a few times in like November of 23 and then maybe once in December, and then kind of, the downtime in the between seasons kind of lost me.
Yeah. I mean, I still have a good time over there. If we ever get any ad revenue, I'll claim it all for myself. I'm starting to see how like the podcast that we listen to just like start rambling because we're already so off topic. We wrote down a list of very specific things that we wanted to talk about. And our hope, like kind of one of our ideas with this podcast is to, like hop on Sunday, like maybe every Sunday night, maybe every other Sunday night. We haven't totally decided or even talked about it. But hop on like Sunday nights, recap events, cover a specific topic, and like be kind of like a shorter form podcast that maybe rarely goes over like 45 minutes. So yeah, but we're well on our way to shattering that 45-minute mark already, I think.
Yeah, but to your point though, yeah, I mean, I think we all realize like what it's like to be flesh and blood players that have like busy schedules. We're all dads. We know it's hard to sit there and watch Pro Tour weekend cover to cover. So we'd love to be that podcast that can be out really quickly and give people a recap if they weren't able to tune into the whole thing, and maybe give you a little bit more color than just scrolling through Twitter.
The most of my Pro Tour consumption this past weekend was during nap time and after my son was asleep already for the day. So yeah. But yeah, so I guess let's jump into like our first topic, other than just saying congrats to Arthur, the winner of the Pro Tour. Like, amazing run. But just to jump into the metagame breakdown, I fully expected that Dromai would be the most played deck. I just felt like it was like probably the most powerful deck in the field. But there were, 24 more KOs than there were Dromais. There were 76 KOs, 52 Dromais. And then the third highest played deck was Dorinthia. And I think we saw why in the top 8. Like, that deck is extremely powerful. Valiant Dynamo is, maybe the best equipment in the game. Like, it blocks like minimum 10 every game. But yeah, what do you guys think of the the metagame breakdown that we saw?
Yeah,
Go for it, Ryan.
I think if you take out KO and Dromai, the field's pretty even, right? Everyone's hovering mid-20s, which is exciting for, it seems like a more balanced metagame, which is, great for the game. Obviously, you have KO in there at 76, which is crazy. I didn't think he was going to be represented, that much more than Dromai. But yeah, what do you think, Colin?
Yeah, similar thoughts. It's interesting following up on RTN where it was like a similar hero distribution outside of Dorinthia. She didn't show up that much at RTNs. A similar hero distribution, but like you guys said, not as much KO and Dromai. I think it's just the case of the players in the tournament, right? The pro players are going to gravitate more towards the top decks than a lot of the people like us who are, your RTN grinders who are playing their favorite deck, kind of no matter what. But yeah, the Dorinthia to me is probably the most surprising. Maybe you could even say most exciting. It's just cool to see someone there that you weren't expecting. Right behind her, Victor. Victor didn't have a great conversion, but it's still cool to see a lot of him. And then Azalea. Azalea, I think, was a great pick. One of our good friends from the area we live in, Tom, was 8-0 on Azalea in Constructed this weekend. She was a great pick for the meta, and so she makes sense to be 5th.
Yeah, Azalea was a great pick. Especially, I think a lot of people, it's like, I was even kind of saying this last week, is like, and mostly because I was just getting my like shit kicked in by a couple Katsus on Talishar, just like complete non-games. Like, I had a game against Katsu where like I did like 3 damage the whole game because I was just so on the back foot, like after a triple bonds and then a double bonds turn. Like, what what are you supposed to do after that? But I think like a lot of that talk of Katsu was creeping up, and I think that may have pushed some people towards Azalea. I don't really know. It's hard to know, what like a lot of these like Pro Tour level players are thinking. And maybe people were just already on Azalea before. I'm sure the KO matchup's pretty solid. Like, dominated damage and on hit effect seems good. But yeah, do we know if like, because there's 29 Dorinthias. Do we know if there was like a big like testing, like a big pro team, like the Runaways or somebody who like all were on that deck, and maybe that like skews the numbers a little bit? Or did a lot of people just kind of land on that, hey, hatchets plus agility tokens is just like kind of busted, and we could just play one of the best like numbers games in the format?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has confirmed if it was like all the Runaways or not, but there was definitely several Runaways members on Dorinthia. I'll be looking forward to their podcast coming out later in the week, where I'm sure they'll talk about it. They're usually pretty open. But the card guys as well. Josh Lau was on Dorinthia, and there's a couple players who I myself at least don't know if they're on a team or not. I'm sure they are, like players who maybe aren't American, who I also saw in Dorinthia. I think a lot of people just kind of came to the same conclusion. They know what you know, Nick. Valiant Dynamo is very, very strong. To me, reminds me a lot of Carrion Husk. It's worth about 6 over the course of the game, I would say, on average, and then it can go up from there. And then just constant pressure in like this mid-range game where there's not a super strong aggro deck. And a lot of teams just seem to have like figured that out. They kind of took these lessons that Kasai taught people early in the format and then just made what looks to be at the moment a better deck.
Yeah, kind of like, okay, the biggest thing about Kasai is that like the ceiling is pretty low on it. How can we increase the ceiling? It's like, oh, we can swing an extra axe every turn. That helps. 3 extra damage every turn. It's not, well, not every turn, but whenever you swing the third axe, it's like those turns are crazy. Yeah, so it was awesome to see. Definitely really unexpected for me. Yeah, was there? Well, I guess we can just move into like kind of the conversion rates now. All the other numbers were kind of like about what I expected. Yeah, I mean, one Tekla Vossen, like shout out to that person. I know they converted, so we'll just that's a good segue, I guess. But for conversion rates, yeah, the top 2 conversion rates were Tekla Vossen, 1 of 1 converted to day 2, and then 9 of 10 Boltons converted. And I mean, I guess I'll get on my soapbox for a little bit, but with our like local testing group and stuff, I see a lot of people in the Discord being like, "Oh, like I was really struggling to Bolton. Like Bolton's tough, man. Bolton's tough." And it's like, yeah, guys, like Bolton is really good. Like especially if you have to block him with attack actions, like that's how he can play as good of a numbers game as anybody, right? So into a field of how many 76 KOs, like Bolton is gonna put up good numbers into KO because he just blocks KO better than KO can block him. So yeah, that was really exciting to see.
Dude,
Go ahead, Ryan.
As a Bolt, do you think that Dromai kind of kept him from having higher numbers in the Pro Tour because only 10 showed up, right? If he's so good in the KO, I feel like that would have been a no-brainer.
I think I definitely like Dromai existing is a reason to not bring Bolton. Also, if there were people who were like testing Bolton, like they're like serious like Pro Tour level players that were testing Bolton, they probably had also figured out that like the Dorinthia deck is really good, and Bolton really kind of struggles in the Warrior Mirror because they never trigger his hero ability. So that's another reason not to bring him. So it's like, yeah, now I'm also kind of like stuck in this spot too where I'm super excited that Dromai's like gonna hit Living Legend soon, but then I'm like, shoot, now like Kasai is gonna get better because of that. Dorinthia is gonna get better because of that. So now Bolton has these warrior mirrors that he's going to have to navigate. I mean, I could talk about like Bolton and the warrior mirrors a ton. I'm sure we'll have an episode at some point about like how to like, I don't know, ways to play into your bad matchups if you are a person who just kind of sticks to just a couple heroes. But yeah, anyways, I'm getting off topic. So
no, I think that's a really good point, though, and that might explain why Bolton had such a high conversion rate. There were 9 Boltons in day 2. Then we didn't really see too many at the top tables towards the end of the day. And I don't know the results of every single match or where everyone was after every round. But you can only assume with 90% of Boltons converting and 73% of Dorinthia's converting that there were lots of Bolton v Dory matches going on day 2. And after what you said, Nick, that makes sense. If Dories were coming out on top of this.
Yeah, matches. I would if there. Yeah, I mean, if there were, I don't know, 10 Bolton Dory matches on day 2, I would expect Dorinthia to win. I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 of those pretty easily. It's a really tough matchup, especially if you aren't like prepared for what Dorinthia is going to do. Because I mean, the Pro Tour players are probably a little more in tune with things, but I would just like sideboard for what the hell is it called? The sword. Oh my god, Dawnblade. Just sideboard for Dawnblade, and then like, oh, what if they flip great? Like, what if I play Josh Lau and he flips Decimator Axe? Like, I'm okay, cool. My sync below's block 2 now. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of like really interesting, I don't know, like play there. I was kind of one of the things that like kind of shocked. Well, there's 2 things that kind of shocked me on the conversion chart. One is that like 0 Phis converted, like 0. Well, how many? I don't even remember how many Phis there were, but none converted. Was just like
there was 8.
Like, Phi used to just be like the most consistent, just like this consistent aggro deck. Like it's gonna convert, it's gonna win RTNs, it's gonna like do well at PQs and stuff. And it's just like to see it at 0% is kind of shocking.
Yeah, I think a lot of people show up on Phi and they're making a bet that they're going to, kind of just do it too much damage too fast in 3/4 of their games. Go 3-1 in CC, do well in draft in day
Mm-hmm.
2, and then it looks like that just didn't
Yeah,
happen for any of them.
yeah, which is rough. And I think that's another thing. As a kind of an outsider looking in, it's like kind of leading up to the Pro Tour. I personally wasn't thinking a lot about like how important draft is at this split format event, but it's like, yeah, draft is huge. Like we saw people's hopes at top 8ing, or even like converting to day 2 go in the tank because draft didn't go well. It's like easy to kind of forget about that as someone just like looking in from the outside.
Yeah. So I think an interesting way to look at this day 2 conversion rate chart is to kind of look at who's above 50%, because obviously that tells you that it's more than just a coin flip, that this is probably a good meta pick. So I'm just going to kind of go through those real quick, if that's okay. Just go through all of them. You can just keep in mind that this is 4 rounds of CC and 3 rounds of draft, and we don't have the draft numbers in front of us, so we kind of just have to take that as a wash. So above 50%, we have Teklo at 100%, 1 of 1. Bolton at 90%, 9 of 10. We already talked about that. Then Dory, 73%. That's the strongest number to me because there were so many Dorys. So that's 73%, even more impressive to me than the Bolton 90%. Then you have Viserai at 67%. That was 4 of 6. Then you have Reinhardt at 58%, KO at 54% conversion, and Victor at 54%. And those are the only heroes that were above a 50-50 to make day 2.
Yeah, and KO being above 50% with almost 80 people registering it like that does just show how powerful the deck is. Like it's just so consistent. It just like there's multiple times throughout the day where you're just like, or throughout the first day where KOs are on stream and these brute mirrors, and you're like, wait, he just blocked 6 and then sent 11 back. Like what just happened? Like what? How did he do that? Oh, Bear Fangs is a 2-card 9. Like it's crazy. Yeah. Ryan, does anything like really stick out to you in this conversion chart?
I think the Via conversion is quite low for how high people were on her heading into PT. People thought she was the best brute, right up there with KO. And seeing her at 22%, I think just shows that the pros weren't sold on her.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even like notice that, but
yeah, and I think it's especially telling when you compare it to Reinhardt and KO, who both had good weekends.
Yeah, that's crazy.
She has all the tools that either of them have. She's talented; they're not. She can run every card they can run. With the
bigger, right? Like she has access to some really good shadow cards, and it's shocking to see Reinhardt have over double the conversion rate. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is super interesting. And I get the biggest difference between her and the other brutes is that like she does just have more variance, right? And it's like maybe that's what it comes. And if I'm a pro player, it's like I'm trying to get away from that. so I mean that. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think Hatch's story shows that. That's because that's like a low variance deck.
Yeah, block with Valiant Dynamo, 2-card 8, refresh Valiant Dynamo.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Katsu is a little surprising to me. Not that his numbers are terrible. 46% of Katsu's converted. But he was like kind of the talk of the town the last couple of weeks. Maybe Azalea having, being the 5th most played deck has something to do with it, like you said, Nick. But I don't know. People were scared of Katsu.
I think people were like,
and one showed up on stream early on in Pro Tour and popped off. But then after that, there was just really
round 1, like on stream round 1, I was I took some notes for the Pro Tour. Guess how many rounds that lasted? 2 1/3, we'll say. But anyways, round 1 was Taylor Crawford versus Michael Fang, and I mean Taylor Crawford just like went down. I mean maybe like 2 or 3 life, and then just popped off with this like huge double bonds turn, and there was just nothing Michael Fang could do. And I think I remember texting you guys, and I was like, Katsu's going to spike this event. Like that was crazy. Like there really aren't there's not another deck that can just like do that out of nowhere like that, right? Like there are combo decks that exist, but Katsu can just like he can just drop 4 cards and then all of a sudden spit out 30 damage, and with very little setup. But I also don't know a lot about the decks. Maybe there's more setup than I think.
We,
But yeah,
I remember we talked Katsu so much going into Pro Tour, because we had our experience with him recently, and yeah, he just can have so much damage so quickly. Um, so that's like another thing I'm kind of disappointed in, because I thought he was gonna have some representation in at least the top 8, but that's
yeah,
getting ahead of.
yeah, yeah. I think that maybe like word got out on Katsu a little too fast. Or maybe not like word got out, but like he became the talk of the town too fast. And then I think I remember like in an interview, maybe after his first top 8 match, like Maximilian, the runner up, which he also had a great run. Like it was really amazing to watch him play that deck. He truly like in a short amount of time, I'm assuming, became a master of that Dorinthia deck. But he said I think he was packing 3 amnesias like because of Katsu. And I was like, dang, like that's a lot of respect for that deck. Um,
Yeah, it, that's the thing. I think Katsu is a very strong deck, but there is I don't I mean I don't know if I'm gonna say more, but I'll say it more like anti ninja cards than maybe some other decks. You think of things like Amnesia, like you said. You have Take It on the Chin and Valiant Dynamo, 2 cards that Dory plays very, very well, that are very, very good
mhm,
into Katsu. Then you have Hold the Line for your Art of War
mhm.
turns and things like that. There's just a lot of cards you can put in your deck if you are scared of Katsu, and I think
Yeah,
people were this
yeah, and
week.
even like Balance of Justice too. Like I think we saw really how
Yeah,
powerful that card can be. Like I mean, they were. I know Josh Lau. I think his only headpiece was Balance of Justice, and it's like he just decided, yeah, even if I don't use it,
well,
like when when it works, it's it's the best. um, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess we can move on to our next topic. Do you got like? Should we break down top 8?
Should we go through the
Yeah,
top
I'm gonna.
8?
I don't have it like pulled up. I'm gonna try to remember it off the top of my head. I think it was 4 KO, 1 Dromai.
Yes.
Shit. 1
One
Kano and
Kano.
2 Dorinthia. Um,
Yes, that was it.
were you guys shocked by anything there with that breakdown? I guess.
I think shocked is a little too strong, but I don't think I expected half KO.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, I
agree.
think I'd agree.
I, I, I mean, especially if you're talking pre-tournament, not pre-day 2, I would have thought it was much more likely to be maybe 2 KO and 1 other
Yeah,
Hmm.
brute.
I think
Yeah,
like when I saw top 8 come around, I wasn't like too aware of Dory's presence at that time. So when I saw 2 Dorys in top 8, I was like, oh wow, Hatches is good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's true. I honestly think Dory just is kind of gonna cast a shadow over this whole conversation,
Yeah,
over this whole weekend. Because I think anytime you say, okay, what was kind of surprising in any way, it's almost kind of implied that Dory is
yeah,
surprising. If you think of where we were like last Wednesday or last Thursday, not being on a team that was practicing Dory, because I think for most people they did not see it
yeah.
coming whatsoever.
And I think the Dorinthia deck too. It's like it's all like it is surprising that it came in the form of Dorinthia, but it's like what's not surprising about it is that no matter what meta we're in, no matter what's going on, like Flesh and Blood at its core is just a numbers game. And I mean, I've seen people like jokingly refer to it as like math simulator. Like we're just playing math simulator for an hour at a time. Um, but in Dorinthia, just like she's a deck that just has amazing numbers, and amazing numbers are always gonna like kind of rise up. That like I guess what was like Brennan Patrick referred to like the Michael Hamilton school of thought of like my turn by turn value is all that matters. And Dorinthia does it really well, so it's cool.
Yeah. But we shouldn't take away. But she didn't win.
Dude,
Dromai won, and Dromai is kind of
dude,
that
trash
anti-numbers
deck,
deck.
trash deck. No. I think Maximilian. I think probably. Yeah, I think he probably took one for the team, and he's like, Dromai's really bad matchup for Warriors. I'm gonna let her get some LL points, and then I'll win the next Pro Tour with Dorinthia. I think that's probably where his head was
that
at.
uh,
um, so yeah, I guess the next thing is just
I come from the perspective of playing Reinar, and I really see the Dromai matchup as favorable. And I think the KO Dromai matchup, I think a lot of KOs seem to see the same way. Even though I'm not sure about a lot of Dromais agree. I think a lot of Dromais do think they can win that matchup. I think especially when you're a really skilled player, and watching Arthur play those games kind of proved that. Like, he was clearly knew the matchup in and out, played to his outs, was never getting flustered by being seemingly on the back foot
Yeah.
or wherever. And just like really, really navigated through those maps.
And it's just like, I guess again, like Arthur really did. He's just like so calm and like chill whenever he's playing. Like even when he's like picking up his cards, like flip his dragons around, he's just like, I don't know. He just seemed like he was in like so in control, and he clearly was. Like he clearly was because he won the whole thing. But yeah, it's just like there were multiple times, even in the top 8, where I was watching it, and it's like, oh dang, it's 32-17. Like Arthur's probably toast, but then it's like, an illusionist is not dead until they are at 0. Like they just hang around in these games. So yeah. I guess the next thing we want to talk about is just like some specific thoughts we have. Colin, I'll let you go first because I know you have some thoughts on Reinar. But what are just like some specific thoughts you have from this event?
Sure, yeah. So like, anytime I'm watching an event as a Reinar main, that's the lens I'm looking at it through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what does this event do for Reinar? What am I learning about how to play Reinar from watching him be played on stream, or what's going to happen to him in the future? So honestly, a lot of the time, especially when top 8 started, what I was thinking about was, dang, if KO wins this, we're gonna get some Living Legends points for the claws. What's that gonna do to my deck? But that ended up not happening, so don't have to worry about that for a while. I did really enjoy watching the couple of games of Reinar we got on stream, though. We got one early against a KO that was super fun, and then we got Pablo Pintor, and that was like probably the most fun I had watching any game in the whole event. One, because Pablo's a great guy, he's fun to watch, and then he's on Reinar, of course. But then it was just really fun to watch because there were lines that he was taking that I was like not sure that I agreed with. But he's Pablo Pintor. I'm not gonna call him out and say that he's like misplaying or whatever. And obviously he won the game that was streamed, even though he ended up not top 8ing. I think he ended up like 13 or 11, somewhere in there. So I just really enjoyed that. There was one line specifically that he played that I really found interesting. The life totals, I'll try to remember it off the top of my head. Actually, I think I wrote it down if I just pull it up for a second. But he was down like 28. He was at 24. That's right. He was at 24, and he had a Fate Foreseen in Arsenal, and KO came at him with a swing big. And so he ended up playing the Fate Foreseen from Arsenal and doing no further blocks, and playing a Blood Rush Bellow on a 4-card hand with his Tunic up. And I think the KO was at lower health than him. So I think it was like 16 or so, because then after Pablo took the damage from the swing big, they were pretty even. So yeah, he played the Blood Rush on the 4-card hand. And he did have 2 costs in hand, so I guess it kind of made sense. And he was playing the Blood Rush off of blue, but he didn't have Tunic up. And to me, as a Reinar player, playing Blood Rush off of a 4-card hand without Tunic is a high risk play, because if you do not draw another blue, you're not gonna claw attack, even if you do have a 2 cost in hand. And that's what ended up happening for Pablo. He drew into reds. And he clawed into a pack hunt, if I'm not mistaken. And so, obviously still a strong turn, 11 damage. 13 damage, and 2 intimidates. It's a really strong turn when your opponent's below 20 health. And I think it.
Oh, Colin, I think we lost you. Oh, there you
go. But it's not the. I would have blocked out the swing big, clawed, arsenaled the Blood Rush, and then kept my life total in the mid-20s, so that the next time I drew a strong Blood Rush Bellow hand, or a slightly worse Blood Rush Bellow hand with my Tunic up, I could have gone and tried to push KO to like sub 5 health. But he didn't take that line. He took the line he took, and it worked out for him. And that, to me, is like one of the great things of tuning into these streams, is watching these pro players play the hero that I love, that I think I know so well, and seeing the lines they take. And it's just like really a fun experience.
Yeah, and I think you explained that really well. Your mic kind of cut out in the middle there for a second, but I think what you were explaining was like with the line he took, right? He still blocked 4 and then presented 13 with 2 intimidates. So like 13 off 4 cards is classic flesh and blood math. That's above rate, right? Like you're getting a lot out of your cards there, or like a good amount out of your cards there. And I wonder if just he was kind of going through that, and it's like, okay, even if I don't draw the blue, I'm still going to present something above rate and put this KO in. I don't want to give this KO a 5-card hand to crack back, but just like that back and forth of like, should I take the face up value here, or should I get that quicken token like you're saying? It's super interesting. Pablo, if you're listening to this, reach out, let us know. Ryan, do you have any or Colin, do you have anything else to say?
I was just gonna say that he did play the Fate before the Blood Rush, so I think he upped his odds a little bit because he bottomed his top card.
Looking for a blue.
So he did have, I think, good odds of drawing the blue. But yeah, you're right. Everything you said is true. Interesting play.
Ryan, do you have any like? We had a busy weekend, so I know there was a lot going on, especially for you this weekend. You were planning a birthday party and everything. But yeah, did you have any specific thoughts that like maybe have to do with like the heroes you like to play and stuff?
I mean, I love Dash. That's my hero for the most part. Mechs are in a tough spot right now with all these brutes running around. So from a Dash lens, inventor extraordinaire, it seems about right. She was like in the middle of the pack, had middle of the pack representation and middle of the pack conversion rate. And I think that just Dash is 50-50 into a lot of heroes. Great matchups into things like Kano, but bad matchups into Rhinar. Bolton's pretty bad. So from a Dash perspective, it makes sense. Nothing crazy out of the Pro Tour for Dash. But just watching some of the games, Michael Hamilton versus Allen in the KO mirror, super exciting.
Such a good game.
In my mind, KO is an aggressive deck, but he plays mid range just with the best of them, I think. So watching the mirror match is just super exciting. And then shout out to Arthur for taking down the whole event and playing the best Sink Below I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, dude, we didn't even mention that.
$50,000.
Yeah, Brian, explain that sequence.
Oh man, yeah, I think they're both at 1. I mean, this just happened like 20 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
So they're both at 1. He tucked the Sink Below in Arsenal his previous turn, and Max played a Spill Blood to give his axes dominate. I think he blocked with a dragon on the first axe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think he blocked like an Uvia or something.
Yeah, he blocked with the dragon, and then Sink Blood on top of it to block for 7, sinking a card. And the only way he could survive this turn was drawing the sigil to get over the next dominated axe. And he did. And I screamed on my couch. The announcers went crazy too. It was the most hype I've ever been for a Flesh and Blood match. It was the coolest. So he took a chance and it paid off.
Yeah, it was his only out. His only out was that sigil, and he drew it. And I wasn't really listening that closely. But I think like somebody maybe standing. Maybe this isn't what happened. Maybe this was just the announcers yelling about it. But was someone that was watching in like from above? You know how they have the spectator area. I think when he drew the sigil, somebody like audibly like yelled and was like, "Oh my god!" Like I think did that happen, or am I imagining?
Really? I didn't hear that.
There was like a couple of turns before that. There was like a big cheer, but I imagine that was like someone pulling an alpha heart or something.
Yeah, or maybe the calling ending or something.
I think that was actually when the calling ended.
But yeah, it was Flesh and Blood is like a very low variance game, and like I mean, Brian Gottlieb has gone on record saying like he thinks there should be a little bit more variance in the game in certain ways, and I think some of us look at that like no, like we love the low variance nature of Flesh and Blood, but like that kind of variance that we saw the very last turn of that game, like that was awesome. Like I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of going to be a bad beat story for Maximilian. You know, it's like, yeah, he drew his only out, but when Arthur is playing so perfectly, like you're going to get rewarded for playing correctly, and he got rewarded for playing exactly how he should have. So it's like, yeah, that happened. Like that's going to happen.
And you see him before he makes that play. He's counting graveyard. He's counting both graveyards for both players to see what's left, and he counts his cards in deck just to see what his chances are of hitting that play. And it's just crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. God, these guys are so good. They're so good. Like, hopefully Arthur doesn't show up to Battle Hard in Atlanta because it'd be a tough one to get through. But yeah, I have like a few specific thoughts. I mean, I took some notes on rounds like 1 through 3, but I'll try to keep it short. My first one, I mean, there was a lot of hullabaloo, and you guys might not want me to say this. There's a lot of hullabaloo leading up to the Pro Tour. Oh, what's the best Flesh and Blood team in the world? Yada yada. The answer is that there's just tons of Flesh and Blood teams. The answer is that there's just tons of really good Flesh and Blood players in the world, and this game is so new that we haven't seen all of them yet. But I mean, the Wolfpack started out 0-3 on stream, which was rough for them. Like that's a rough showing. Like they need to come back and defend their turf in like national season in PT Amsterdam. Because I mean, we know that they have like some amazing players on that team, and I'm sure that like they're a great group of people and they love hanging out and they have great camaraderie. But that round 3 game, Michael Hamilton versus round 3? Michael Hamilton versus Alan Lau. That game was so good, like so good. And I remember thinking, like towards the end of that match, I was like, this is the best game of Flesh and Blood I've ever watched. Like it is just so tense. It is, both players are like playing around each other so well. Michael Hamilton like used his flesh bag and got 10 value out of it and lost. Like how does that like, and I was like trying to play it back in my head, like how did that like, how do you get 10 value out of flesh bag and not win? And it's just like both players were just eking every bit of advantage they could out of their decks, and it was just like, yeah, it was just really impressive.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so while we're on the subject of the KO mirror, you're right. It was a great game. I think a lot of it is flesh bag. When to use flesh bag, a lot of it is like how aggressive to be, how much to block. But I will give a shout out to Joel, I think it was from Canada, who's in top 8 on KO. That him and his testing group, who I think I heard the announcers mention is Tarek Patel and Matt Rogers and Hayden Dale and all them, were on down but not out for the KO mirror, which is like a super interesting piece of tech because it's easy or for KO to have more tokens than you because you're both usually creating one. Your might token breaks on your turn. They have a might token and you don't. And then if you just, you have 2 pieces of temper or 3 pieces of temper equipment. You have your Apex, your flesh bag, and your tunic. So you should be able to kind of work around it most of the time and have less equipment than them. Play your down but not out. I don't know.
That's
I thought it was a cool piece of tech. He ended up discarding it randomly in the one time that I saw it on stream. But yeah, it was cool, and we'll probably something we'll see going forward in KO.
It's like the way that the Lexi mirror was like evolving in the Lexi meta, where it's like, oh, now they're all playing the freaking Cracker Jacks to make their CNCs 7. It's like, oh, cool. They only have to care about each other because everything else just loses to them. But no, that's really fast. Were they just on one down but not out? Just like one single copy?
That's the only one I saw. I mean, I'm sure his deck list got published, I think, because it was in top 8. I'll look it up real quick if you have another thought you wanted to share.
No, talk to a lot of other Bolton players, like people who are kind of just like Bolton mains, like Bolton stands, some may call us Bolton simps. And a couple people I know somebody started out 4-0 in CC and then 0-3 draft, which is like just so rough. Like they were really bummed out. And a couple other people that with talking like the Bolton Discord and everything, like made day 2. Somebody plays 35th on Bolton. Their list looked cool. They decided to pack some like a couple copies of Warmonger's Diplomacy, which is like Bolton decks are like for the most part 68 to 70 of the cards are like just kind of have to be there because there's like a lot of deck building restrictions with light cards and charge cards and yada yada. But there's like these 10 to 12 slots we can play with, and that's kind of what we're all doing all the time. But he decided to side in a couple warmongers, and he was like, it literally won me games. Like he faced a couple azaleas in a Viscerai game where warmongers won him the game. So it was like cool to just kind of see people discussing that and like their different, I don't know, their different like sideboarding decisions and everything.
Yeah. That is cool. It's kind of what I was trying to get out with Ryan R2. Was like that's really cool when you have your hero and that's how you approach events and like what do I learn from that? And it was one down but not out.
That's cool.
That he had in his list.
I get one thing I was surprised by. I guess I'll do one more one more immediate thought. Roger was on stream, and I know he used to be like a combo bolt player. Like he was mostly on sabers, and this is just kind of it was interesting to me.
Roger Bowden from the MNR cast, right?
So he's like a well known, like a very vocal Bolton player, right? He was on sabers only for a long time, and then recently he's kind of like picked up the Raiden plan. And from like what I had like heard just from like things he was saying and stuff, he was like on a very we'll get more into like the philosophies of Bolton and how you could build him at some point. Maybe I'll just record a solo podcast that's like 4.5 hours long. I'll just talk into the void. But yeah, I expected Roger to like flip Tunic and like have these like goblets of blood run wine and like these things like really make it so you have this like you're basically just playing around via the Vanguard. Like you're playing to these massive like 25, 30 damage via the Vanguard turns. But then he flipped Soulbond Resolve. And I was like, is Roger a Soulbond gamer now? Because like I did not see this twist coming. And I'm like I've been really high on Soulbond Resolve for a lot of matchups, like since it was released. So that was cool. It was cool to see somebody who like I don't know, I thought he thought about Bolton one way, and then to see him like packing his equipment that was like just cool to like see the evolution of how people think about Bolton. But yeah, so I guess real quick we can jump into the last section, which is we can just kind of like run over what we think the implications are going to be of this Pro Tour for like the upcoming PQ and Battle Hardened circuit. I guess we're going to Battle Hardened Atlanta, but let's just do like a quick round. I'm sure we're going to talk about this topic more like as we lead up to Battle Hardened Atlanta, but just like quick hitters. What do we think the implications of this event are going to be for the meta?
Yeah.
I guess, Ryan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So
yeah, go for it, Ryan.
I think the biggest implication, right, is Dromai being 4 points away from being a living legend hero. And I think that if she doesn't win a Battle Hardened between now and PQ season, that she'll rotate out first week of PQ. And I know some people are more than others about that.
If she doesn't win a Battle Hardened in like the next couple weeks, I would be so sad in Atlanta. I would be so sad.
but I think that's the biggest implication. Just got 200 points from winning Pro Tour, so just 4 points away. So that, yeah, I think other than that, I think KO is going to be a huge representation moving forward to figure out how to beat him.
When Dromai rotates, that's a great one, Ryan. And when Dromai rotates, is Flesh and Blood 1.0 as we know it gone? Is she the last like Flesh and Blood quote unquote 1.0 hero?
No.
I mean, it depends where you cut off the power level because like Levia and Bolt are still there. They've just been weaker.
They're not. Yeah, we don't need to worry about them.
But
if what you're talking about is like the 6 talents,
wasn't Uprising the start of 2.0?
Oh, and Phi is still there too.
Uprising might have been the start of 2.0.
I thought it was.
Well, they printed Dromai and Icelander. That said so. Oh, never mind. Whatever. Colin, I'll go next because I feel like your implication will probably be more serious and better than mine. My implication is that for Battle Hardened Atlanta, I'm gonna figure out this Warrior Mirror. I'm gonna figure out how to beat these Dories, and I'm gonna win Battle Hardened Atlanta. That's the implication.
Let's go.
But first, I need Dromai to LL before.
You're here first. Call a shot.
All right, Colin, go ahead.
If you're listening to this and you're going to Battle Hardened Atlanta, bring Dory and
Kick my
be
ass.
ready because Nick says he's figured you out.
Yeah. Hey, wait, you're swinging a hatchet a third time? Judge. All right, Colin, you go ahead.
I mean, mine's similar, honestly. The main thing I'm thinking about is Dromai rotating. I feel like Warrior is going to go up because I feel like we did, we did just see a very close game in the final. Dory could have won that match, but I think historically, a lot of Warriors don't love their Dromai matchup. Except for I think Dawnblade Dory does feel okay about it because she can stack counters. But I think Warrior is going to go up when Dromai leaves, and now Warrior's really going to go up because Dory's kind of had this new build I think a lot of people weren't aware of that you're going to start seeing at like RTN level now and Battle Hardened level and things like this. So watch out for Warrior. Look at your deck box, see what cards you can get that are good, not just into Dory historically, but specifically this type of Dory. And then when you're going to an event, think about, okay, who am I playing? And are they going to be Dawnblade? Are they going to be Great Axe? Are they going to be Hatchets? And use that to make your sideboarding decision. It's going to make it really tricky. I've already got a few cards in mind, but I'm eager to go test them out. Nick, I'm probably going to ask you to run some Dawnblade or some Hatchets.
Yeah, are you sure you don't want me to run Hatchets Olympia into you? I could do that.
Let's stick with Dory then. When you solve Olympia, then you can play her.
All right. Yeah, that Dory list. I mean, it looks so good and so consistent. I think I have everything I would need to build it as well, which is like kind of tempting. So maybe I'll show up to Atlanta and just join the Dories. Who knows? Yeah, maybe that's the implication. Is I put Bolton away.
First plan doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. No, if I was a can't beat him, join him type of person, I would have joined him a long time ago. So.
Maybe
now I'm just can't beat him. Yeah.
Can't beat him. Play
I'm gonna go to one RTN and go 3-3 kind of guy now. But yeah. I think we can kind of wrap it up there. How much time? 47. We beat our 45-minute mark. We're at 47 minutes. But this was like super exciting. I think this went surprisingly well. I thought this was going to crash and burn, honestly. When we hit record.
Yeah, I hope people found it interesting. And like we said at the beginning, we're really trying to give you some recap of the event, give you some things to think about, talk about things that your local game store will probably be talking about this week at the Armory. And just kind of give our quick reactions to what happened the most recent week in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah. Ryan, any last thoughts?
No. I think everyone had some great points. Just to reiterate what Colin said, we're not pro players, right? We don't have expert analysis. I think we're just the like a common player that people can relate to. Our RTN grinders, local armory participants. So just excited to share our thoughts.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks guys. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm gonna see if I can get this thing published now, so let's see if that works.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
See ya.
I'm gonna break. I'll edit this out. This is where the funky music will play. Drink of tea. Now's a good time.
That's your last one for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. No more drinking unless it's a beer. But if it is, don't slurp it like that.